Hi, I'm Samuel Stone. One thing that I like about Christmas is that it comes right before the New Year. It helps me end the year with a positive note, no matter how hard the year had been. And it also helps me enter the New Year with hope. I know for some people this Christmas might not be a happy one, especially for those who have lost their loved ones or missed them. Still, the true message of Christmas can lift our spirit, melt our sorrows away, and fill our hearts with hope for a better new year. When we were young, the primary reason of joy at Christmas time is the gifts we receive. Our expectation of gifts become bigger as we grow older. Maybe men are weaker on this aspect, as I heard women say, the difference between a boy and a man is the price of his toys. Hopefully sooner or later, we all become mature enough to look for gifts beyond material things. As I grow older, I long more for the invisible gifts of Christmas than the physical ones. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate your physical gifts. The more the merrier. I'm sure you know what I mean. And you will feel the same as you become older and more mature. In fact, we all receive 5 most precious presents of life from Christmas. However, I've discovered that many people just have never unwrapped all these 5 gifts. The gift that is not unwrapped is equal to not receiving it. If you want to make the most out of Christmas for a great new year, you need to unwrap these 5 most valuable gifts that I call the high 5 gifts. I will explain why I call them high 5 gifts rather than top 5 gifts. But first, these are what you need to do to get the most out of your upcoming year and your future. Number 1, unwrap the gift of God's presence. The presence of God is where happiness is. As King David says, in your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. What a beautiful place to be. Jesus' name is Emmanuel, meaning God with us. His birth brought the gift of God's presence. Without him, we wouldn't have known what God really is like. The consciousness of God's presence is invaluable. Meditating on his life stories brings you the fullness of joy and everlasting pleasure that nothing can compare. Even King David, with all his royal luxuries, couldn't match what he possessed with the joy of the presence of God. No success or achievement in our lives can bring the pleasure equal to God's presence. So unwrap it this year by raising your level of consciousness to God's presence. Secondly, unwrap the gift of God's peace. Another nickname of Jesus is the Prince of Peace. You know that our world is hungry for peace. I remember when we were young, even though life may be tough, we thought peace would happen one day. But as we grow older, we found peace to be even at a farther distance. Bertrand Russell was a peace activist and one of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century. He was a well-known atheist, and one of his famous essays was "Why I Am Not a Christian." When he was on his deathbed, he asked his wife, his third wife, to hold him and said, "Honey, you know that I've been a peacemaker, a peace activist all my life, but I've never found peace except in your arms." It sounds very sweet, but it tells us that this great mind of the time has missed unwrapping the gift of peace and looked for peace elsewhere, and he couldn't find it. Don't make the same mistake. Stop looking for peace on this earth where it cannot be found. Instead, unwrap the peace that is already given to you. How? It's simple. Read the New Testament with the purpose of raising your level of consciousness to God's peace and presence. Thirdly, unwrap the gift of God's power. Have you ever found yourself powerless in certain things you want to do or change? We all can use a little bit more power to achieve our dreams. We are like the smartphones of our times, always power thirsty, always running out of juice, as they say. We need to charge them almost daily. At Christmas, God displayed his power over nature. For nothing would be impossible with God, was Angel Gabriel's word to Mary when he came to announce the miracle of Christ's incarnation. This power is a gift for you now. If you can tap into God's power through constant consciousness of God's presence, it will be like having a smartphone permanently plugged into the power source, and you will have unlimited power supply for your life. How to tap into this power? Spend a few minutes daily feasting on the teaching of Jesus Christ. The fourth one is unwrap the gift of God's promises. We live in a fallen world. Buddhism calls it a sea of suffering. In addition to God's presence, peace, and power, we also need hope to cope with this life. God's promises are our hope because nothing else can guarantee fulfillment. The coming of Jesus is the fulfillment of the past promises of God, which assures us that the other promises will be fulfilled in the future as well. One important promise that you need to unwrap at this time is that God not only gives you the power to swim through this sea of suffering, but also guarantees you that you will overcome this life triumphantly. As Apostle Paul wrote, I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. You know that there are over 3,000 promises in the Bible. Memorize as many as you can, and your heart will be lifted up to a higher level of consciousness, and your life will be filled with hope. Finally, unwrap the gift of God's purpose. Number 5, unwrap the gifts of God's purpose. One of the most important questions to answer in life is, what is my purpose of life? The problem is we tend to find the answer everywhere except the right place. Let's say, if you want to know the purpose of an electronic device that you know nothing about, would you want to check out its manual, or better yet, consult the maker of it? The best place to find your life purpose is from your maker. Your maker has given you a user manual called the Bible. If you want a personal demonstration, Jesus' life on earth has shown us a perfect demonstration of how to live a significant life. And the best place to explore your life purpose and practice fulfilling it is a community of faith and the church where they cultivate fruitful life. If you don't want to waste your life, spend some time daily to unwrap your life purpose by reading the manual, reviewing the Maker's demonstration through Jesus Christ, and participating in a good community of faith. Don't waste another year being pushed about by the waves of the sea of suffering. Don't waste another year living in the unconsciousness or the darkness of life. Take control of your life by unwrapping these 5 gifts of Christmas. I call it the high 5 gifts of Christmas, so that whenever you look at your fingers, you will remember these 5 gifts. They will accompany you to build a significant life. Jesus is always ready to give you a high five, waiting for you to respond. So let's start this year responding to Jesus' high five and give your family and friends a high five with a new meaning. Remember, your high five from now on represents God's presence, God's peace, God's power, God's promises, and God's purpose. Happy New Year. May these gifts bring you the best year ever.